from the heart of Dubai, where tomorrow is being built today, to the world. Welcome to the CTO Show with Mehmet. Here, we redefine technology and reimagine possibilities. With Mehmet, delve into the riveting realms of AI, cybersecurity, and digital technology. Experience the thrilling highs and lows of startups. Immerse yourself in the spirit of entrepreneurship and witness the future of business innovation being written in real time. Now, without further ado, let's tune in and explore the future.
Hello and welcome back to a new episode of the CTO Show with Mehmet. Today, I'm very pleased. Joining me from Perth, Australia, founder and CEO of Podyssey, Ahmad Saleem. Ahmad, thank you very much for being with me here today. I really appreciate the time. It's a bit late for you at the time of this recording. The way I love to do it is I keep it to my guests to introduce themselves. So a little bit more about you, your background, your journey, and what you're currently up to. So the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mehmet. First of all, thanks for having me on the show. My background, I guess it's a little bit different than I guess most people that might have come on the show. I started my professional life as a geologist. I used to work for various mining companies and natural resources companies. During that role, I did quite a bit of stuff with technology, internal R&D projects and technology development. That led me to an obvious thing to go do a PhD in economics. Then I went to work for a private equity fund. Again, had quite a lot of involvement with technology startups at that time. And then now I'm the founder of my own technology startup after having played with other people's startups for a while, which is called Podyssey. We're building a search engine for podcasts.
Nice. Very traditional question, Ahmed. Why, you felt there's a reason to build the search engine for podcasts? Like, what's the shortcomings you've seen, and what drove you to say, like, maybe this is something, a problem worth to solve? I would call it this way.
It's a good question. I guess when I worked, I did quite a lot of traveling, and so I really got into podcasts at that time. The type of travel I had, you have a lot of downtime in airports, downtime in traveling to places. Podcasts were kind of like my vice. So I consumed them as much as I could. So I really love podcasts as a medium. I thought it was the thing that really appealed to me. I hosted my own podcast for a while. And so I really love podcasts. And I guess what I found about podcasts was that, probably in the last 10 years, podcasts as a medium have completely exploded. The amount of podcasts we have now is phenomenal, I think, compared to what they were 10 years ago. And one of the things that I often found, and this, to be honest, I always thought this was a me problem, in that, I always listen to interesting bits in podcasts, and then it would take me ages to go try to find it again. And to the point where I could never sometimes find that content. And so I built a little, a little application for myself where I fed all the podcasts that I listened to into it, just so I could go find the content that I wanted to in it. And then as I shared it around, I found that, it was a problem that most people had, or a lot of people in my network had. And so, so then I kind of switched my thinking from, this is not just a me problem, this could be a lot of people problem. And then, essentially that's kind of the seed of the idea, how it came about. And I guess in general, because there's so many podcasts now, I think, finding podcasts is not the problem, but finding content within the podcast, I think, is becoming the problem. Also, podcasts are becoming more long form. So, it might be the same with this podcast where the title has very little relevance to what we actually talk about inside the episode.
Yeah.
So I think it became trying to find, coherent bits of content within podcasts, I always felt was a problem. So that's why we kind of went down this path.
Yeah, thank you, Ahmed, for bringing this. And I keep telling people I shoot myself in the foot by naming the podcast the way I named it.
Yeah.
I had a logic, but anyway, yeah, you're right. And first I felt guilty until I found out that actually majority of the people, for different reasons, they had to, I would call, mix a lot of topics within the main topic that they
Yeah.
thought that will be the main theme. Now, as you said, like it's a problem which myself, even I had to do categorization myself for every episode. So I remember, like, okay, I'm talking to Ahmed today about founder story, AI, and something related to podcasts, right? So I had to build my own, I would say, database for remembering what kind of episodes I recorded. Now for you, and of course, building a startup needs to move fast. So if you want to remember, like, kind of the first maybe 3 to 90 days, how actually it looks like, you know like what kind of quick decisions you were able to make, especially, like, now we're living in the age of AI and development using AI. So there might be a lot and tons of options that popped up in front of you, and you had to take the decision. So walk us through, like, these kinds of key moments in the first few months of launch.
So I mean, I guess like the history like our personal history around Podyssey was that, like I came from a background of language processing. So so I had already had a startup that did language processing and data analytics and data mining. So that probably wasn't the major kind of like stumbling block for us to start. Like the stumbling block really was around the scale of podcasts, like, like how many podcasts there are and how could we build something that could scale. Like if you, depending on what podcast you're accessing, they could be released at any time. So how do you kind of figure out, like, what are all the active podcasts in the world? When are they being released? Like what content's being released, and all of those things. Um, so I think, like, to your question about what were some of the early decisions, I mean, we debated for a long time about how to do this, and then eventually we said, well, let's just start. Let's just start with X amount of content and see whether we can consume it. And like I said, I'm an avid podcast listener. There's very few podcasts that I haven't listened to. So I kind of fed all of the podcasts that I was interested in, and then I wanted to find content within it, and that was kind of our original scale, or original kind of prototype we had. Um, so that was kind of, I guess, the start of it. And like, I guess your question is really asking, is like, like, what were some of the stumbling blocks or daunting steps that we kind of face early on? And I, like, the simple answer to that is everything is daunting, right? Like, you have no idea about how you're going to navigate um, this kind of, like, dark space that you found yourself in. But I get, like, that's the job, I guess, of a founder or CTO is, you take a problem which has no steps, and then you slowly try to build all the steps out of that problem.
Right. Now, I want to little bit deep dive without going into too much technicalities, Ahmed, around applying AI and NLP, natural language processing, to discovery problems. Now, we all use, tools which use AI, of course, to try to do the transcription, right?
Hmm.
And, one of the challenge I saw myself, it's because, like, look, you live in Australia, you might have the Australian accent. I have a mixed accent because I'm
Yeah.
not a native English speaker, right? So I have a mix of an American slash also like British accent, kind of. Um, so does that make the challenge hardest, I would say, to get the transcript itself, understanding the context, which maybe someone was saying, like, how the accuracy works, in a world where we have like multiple accents, like maybe sometimes the quality of the audio is not working well. Trying to understand, your takes on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, the short answer to that is, I think if you probably tried to do this 5 years ago, I think it would be impossible. Because I just don't think like the audio to text and even the text processing was that good. But in the last couple of years, I think it's come a long way. Like accents and things like that. Yeah, they cause problems. Probably audio quality is probably the main issue. Um, like if someone doesn't record audio well, then it doesn't really matter what processing you do on it. It's a bit of a car crash. Um, but the harder thing I think for us was really like understanding the context of the content in various geographies or languages. Like each language kind of has its own kind of contextual understanding, jargon, things like that. And I think that was probably the more of the challenge that we faced. But there are ways around it. Like I think it's always a trade-off in accuracy versus, I guess, how much you can process. I guess those are all the judgment calls you have to make. Like when you're building a product. Like how much do you want to blow your brains out trying to like get everything absolutely accurate versus trying to get something that's useful, but may not be, like 100% accurate in every instance.
Right. So transcription is one part of the game, Ahmed, and there is the other part, which is, doing the discovery and me as a consumer to give me something useful. So where
Mhm.
the AI is adding value here, like, and if you share, what exactly Podyssey, can help me, for example, as a heavy podcast consumer in my discoveries. So if you can shed some light on this part also.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the simplest way of explaining kind of what we wanted to build in Podyssey was the same as what I guess Spotify has done to music. Yeah, so Spotify has kind of changed the unit of sale of music from an album to a song. So you don't have to listen to the whole album. You can just find the song you like, and then their kind of algorithm in the back goes and finds all of the other songs that are somewhat similar, or slightly different, or slightly edge kind of edge similarities to the song that you like. And that's essentially what we're doing in Podyssey is that, like we don't think that you need to listen to the whole episode anymore. Like you can start your discovery from a topic or a part of a podcast that you like. And then you can find similar snippets or similar discussions in other podcasts or in other episodes as you kind of jump along. And so, like I guess, I mean, this is as a user, one of the problems that I found about a podcast was like trying to find new podcasts was like how do I find them? Um, the way podcasts are categorized are really around genres. So let's take let's take Joe Rogan's episode. Now, like what genre does his podcast fit into? Is it is it lifestyle? Is it sports? Because he talks about MMA. Is it politics? Like what? And so I generally think that the podcast categories as they kind of set out on most podcast apps are, I think, pretty much useless or redundant. So either you get really niche podcast categories, or you get such general ones like business, which has like millions of podcasts in it. And so trying to find content becomes kind of hard. So I think that's kind of the challenge around discovery is, like how do you find, like you have say 4 or 5 podcasts in your rotation, how do you add a sixth one? Like how do you go and discover like new podcasts? You either take a recommendation from a friend or you stumble upon it randomly, which is okay. But how do you find like a podcast that talks about like topics that you're interested in? Say you're an EPL fan or something like that. Like how do you find a podcast where people talk about EPL, statistics in a certain way or something like that? Like that's I guess the challenge of trying to do podcast or discovery in podcasts.
Right. Now, I'm curious to know, Ahmed, about the business model of Podyssey. Like, how does it work? Like, do you charge the host? Like, is it like subscription for the people who discover podcasts? Walk us through this.
I mean, initially what we started with, it's a pretty simple model. Like, it's a Spotify model. You're a user, you pay to use the app. Paid gets you, I mean, you can use the app for free, but paid allows you to curate your own content. So you can pick your own kind of stations like you do in Spotify, and allows you to build your own kind of catalog of content. Um, but then there's like a whole bunch of other stuff that we found that we could commercialize along the way. Like we have a whole B2B side now as well, where people want to find out what people are talking about, like their brand or something that they've put out, like a TV show coming out or something like that. So that's something that I mean, this all kind of happened by mistake in the fact that we went out to like marketing agencies to try to market our product, and they came back to us and said, actually, we want to use your product for something completely different. And then we happily kind of went down that path as well. And so that's kind of like the interesting side that we found, is that there's many different ways that we can kind of monetize it. And then, like, being really honest, there's some things that we're still kind of discovering about what we could do with this. But yeah, the ideal kind of path is that it's an app. People pay as a listener, they pay to use it. There's a feature as a podcast host as well that, like if you wanted to search your own content or try to create certain things out of your own content, we can add that as well. It's not something that we've added in yet. So it's I guess it's quite a rounded kind of offering. But yeah, we'll kind of test the market to see which one lands first.
Good. Now I gotta ask you about going back again to growing the offering, Ahmed, and something we I interviewed a lot of founders, CTOs, CEOs, like different executives, and you know the moment when you have the product market fit and then you want to take it to the next step to scale. So we see a lot of people fall into this trap of like adding features and then having what we call a technical debt, because they stuffed a lot of things. So
Yep.
because like the idea is, and this is kind of a trivia, right? So I was thinking this way, like if I for example, even not in a business perspective, if I interview more guests, if I have more episodes, like the podcast will grow, right? So this is the same thinking I think as us humans we have, like the more features, the more people will come, the more customers we have. So how to avoid these traps, like especially in the phase just right after you are sure you get the product market fit?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think one of the problems we had is because we had this history of language processing and kind of handling content. Like we built essentially all of the features we wanted to build on day one, but we decided that we weren't going to put all of them into our product, because we didn't really know what features the market actually wanted. And so, so we were lucky in that when we beta tested it, like we had like quite a good group beta testing, so we could kind of ask them, like what were features that they like. Because I think there has to be like a little bit of an exploration by the consumer as well, or the market has to kind of explore and see, like what is, like what are the things that your product can solve, or how can they grow beyond just a simple feature to a more evolved feature and things like that. So the customer has to kind of explore that with you to some degree, unless you're pitching a product into a market where like exactly what the problem is and you're just trying to solve that. Like we weren't really in that space, largely because I guess the average podcast listener may not have thought that this is a problem that they really struggle with. But when they see the solution, they go, oh, yeah, actually, like I do struggle with that. So like I think that it's a good question about features. I think the trap is that you can build too quickly, and then you kind of make it really onerous on yourself to have to maintain this quite unwieldy thing. Because it's easy to put features out, it's hard to take them away, because like there'll always be complaints, no matter if it's one person using it or 1,000 people, 1,000,000 people, whatever. Like there'll always be complaints. So you always got to be, I think, careful about what you put out. And then however you want to test that to figure out that that's what your market wants. I think you should wait as long as possible to do that before you put things out.
Right. Even I'm expert in B2B, not more than B2C. But again, yeah, we have this saying that once you put it there, you have to support it. Like if it is out,
Yeah.
if it is in the menu, you cannot say, hey, like, yeah, but it's like just a because
Like on Thursdays, we don't make this dish. It's like, why not you? Like, what's the deal? So
yeah,
I think that's exactly right.
right. Now, regarding building, a team that can ship that fast, especially with the AI. So I gotta ask you a couple of questions here. So how a lean but effective technology team actually look like in practice, Ahmed?
I think the key thing, I guess, for startups or even like small teams is I think you got to have clarity on vision and clarity in decision making. Like it doesn't really matter if you make wrong decisions, but like taking too long to make decisions is probably the worst thing you can do. Um, like startups are essentially a company with like large degrees of uncertainty or unequal information. Like you don't know. Like you hold a lot more information about your product than the customer does, or even the market does. And so you may be making decisions where you think it's with like perfect clarity, and the market might be receiving it with less than perfect clarity because they just don't understand your product or don't have the depth. Um, so I think the key things that I guess I've learned out of it is that, like I think you gotta, like everyone needs to have the same vision, like where they want to get to or what do you want to do. And then just the decision making process has to be quite clear, and fast. Like I said, mistakes are okay, but like decision making apathy is bad.
Right. Now, regarding hiring the team, now, Ahmed, things changed a lot. Like, if I ask this question, maybe beginning of 2025, it's different than, and we are airing this in 2026, early 2026, although we're recording in December 2025. So the answer is different. If we go 1 year back, same thing.
Yep.
Now, but there must be kind of patterns or general, commonalities still in the kind of, let's say, the traits of the team members, like that you need to hire to move fast but at the same time maintain the quality. So what that would be?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I mean, I guess the thing that we targeted in Podyssey is, like I live in Perth, Australia. It's probably not the biggest community in like the AI or machine learning space. Like compared to like San Francisco or something like that. So one of the things I guess I targeted was that I wanted to find anyone anywhere in the world, and figure out a way of working with them. So I didn't really care whether they were based in Perth or not. So I guess the trait that I was looking for is that they could work independently. So we don't have to be in perfect contact all the time. We could discuss what things needed to happen, and they were kind of independent and self-motivated enough to go and kind of do things. That may not be the same as if you had everyone sitting in the same room. And I understand that. So early on, we had plenty of people that came and joined our company, and they went, you know what, this is not for me. I would prefer to go sit in an office. I want to sit next to people. I want to be in constant touch with them. And I was like, that's impossible. You're based in Vancouver. I'm based in Perth. There's a 16-hour difference.
Oh,
Like our work days are going to overlap for maybe 2 or 3 hours at a time. So, the rest of the time you're going to have to think on your feet. So we cycled people through because of that. Um, and then I think I mean, from that's, I guess, the team building aspect. And then there's things like, like there's a certain type of people that are comfortable working in startups and other people that are probably not. And so I think, like you got to look for those traits, and are they comfortable with, like uncertain other outcomes? Are they okay with building something that's not perfect, which is also a malaise that often affects startups, that you just spend your time trying to perfect everything. Um, and I think, I guess from our team dynamic, the key things were that, like people needed to be able to work independently, be able to understand the task, like clearly in whatever calls that we did, remotely. I mean, like we did kind of start during the tail end of COVID, so I guess people were used to working remotely, so it made it slightly
right,
easier. But I think those are kind of the things that we looked for initially.
right. I'm gonna go back quickly to ask you about something related to AI. So everyone
Mhm.
is saying a- AI agents, agentic AI, whatever you want to call it, right? is going mainstream. So if I want to think about that in the context of long form content consumption, which is exactly what you try to help people into in discovering
Yep.
and summarizing. Do you see any role for AI agents in this field, Ahmed? And it's okay if no.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Obviously, I think there will be a role that they will play. Um, yeah, like I think, I guess what my feeling right now is looking at like AI companies. Yeah, like AI agents seem to be tackling, um, I guess, more like routine tasks. That's what people seem to be kind of like focusing on. And more of that focus seems to be where there's a large amount of data that needs to be summarized or consumed, and then yeah, like kind of given a essentially a summary or some like list of actions that people can have. That seems to be like like travel, or like I get this many marketing kind of influx of things. I want someone to summarize it and kind of give it to me in that sense. Um, I mean, the space that I've seen in podcasts around AI agents is more around helping you create content, like so you can kind of give it prompts, and it helps you effectively be like an associate producer or something like that, and helps you kind of create content. Um, I mean, I haven't seen too many go into the space of trying to find content or trying to
Mhm.
handle like the context of conversation. And I think primarily the part of that would be in that I guess you could do it in a localized way, but we're trying to do the whole catalog of podcasts around the world, like irrespective of language, irrespective
Mm.
of which platform it's released in. So so we are kind of trying to aggregate all of this content into one place. And I'm not sure that's perfectly the role of AI agents in that sense. They seem to be a little bit more local agents. Um, but that's not to say that, like they couldn't do this. But yeah, I guess they haven't gone into this space yet. So it'll be interesting to see whether they go into that space or not.
Right. I gotta shift to the founder story, Ahmed, a little bit with you. Like, you are a serial entrepreneur, and you had like nearly 20 ventures. So after so many ventures, how has your relationship with failure changed?
I guess it's gotten easier because you failed so many times. But they like, I guess I don't really look at startups as like like success or failure. I think they all come in at different times in your life to kind of teach you different lessons. Like I guess when I started, like I didn't really found any companies. I worked for many startups, and part of that was to kind of learn all of the things that go wrong in startups. Like I effectively learned from other people's mistakes. Um, and so I wouldn't call them failures. I mean, they weren't failures for me. They were quite successful because I learned lessons out of them. They might have been a failure to the founder because the company didn't go anywhere, or it struggled, or it got stuck wherever it got stuck. Um, but I think by nature, like I think you're okay. I mean, even in my like in my professional career as a geologist, like you're pretty attuned to failure. Because my role was really as a discoverer of new opportunities, and not every opportunity comes off. So like it's maybe one in 1,000 that works out. So the other 999 bite the dust. So you're kind of okay with failure. I guess the part that like my relationship to failure has changed in the sense that I have more at stake as a founder when it fails. So it's like it's my name, or it's my idea, or it's my, I don't want to say reputation, but like essentially you're the flag bearer of what you're trying to put out. So when it fails, maybe initially it hurts your ego a lot more because you think that it didn't succeed because of you. And I think later on you realize that there's far more to it. There's timing, there's people. There's your idea was probably a good idea, but it was the wrong time in the market, or people didn't understand it. I think that makes it softer over time, I'd say. I don't know if that
I
was a
love
good
this.
answer or not, but
No, no, I love that because you mentioned something which struck in my head, which is you don't consider that failure, you consider that lessons. And honestly, like I had to learn the hard way also myself, like not necessarily in the context only of a startup, like in your professional and even personal life, right? So,
Yeah.
and you learn by doing mistakes. And there's this famous story about Thomas Edison saying that I didn't fail 100 times, I just discovered, like the 101,000. I can't remember exactly, but this is the
Yeah,
quotation.
yeah. I found new ways of doing like, like whatever it
Yeah,
was. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So he didn't see them as failures, he saw them as ways of continuous learning. Now, one thing also, Ahmed, I'm not sure if you can shed light. Some people, they get so emotional, and we are all humans, we get attached to what we do. So resetting after something that doesn't work out, like how, any experience you can share or anything you want to say about this?
Yeah, I mean, I think yeah, disappointment is, I guess, it's hard. Yeah, like I think there's always moments where you question your ability whether you should do it again, or like, yeah, like I guess the postmortem on what you could have done differently, and yeah, like whether you can whether you should have done things differently or listen to different advice, or things like that. Um I guess like like from that point of view, um, I can understand why people find it difficult to start again. Um, but like I guess I always take the view that like you're always starting off better the next time. Like you learn more, so hopefully you won't make the same mistakes again. But I think like the part that I've learned about starting again is that I think you inevitably, when I've started again, you pick better people to work with. I think people is kind of the part that I think helps get back up. Um, and I think that's also something that, there's like the founder's dilemma and all of these things that people talk about in psychology. I think that's really
Right,
true in that, like the more you take on, the more crushing it is when I don't mean to sound bad, but like not crushing, but like the more disappointed you feel when it kind of
right.
inevitably ends. But I think the more people you have to kind of help you along the journey, the more able you are to get up again as well.
Right. Um, what is something exciting related to Podyssey you're currently working on, Ahmed?
I mean, the one thing that we're trying to work on is, like I guess what I would love is that, like any podcast content gets put out in any language, anywhere in the world, on any platform. Like I don't have to go find the platform. I don't have to go find, like a transcript that I can read in English or any other language I know. Like I'd love to be able to consume content in various ways. And that's, I guess, what we are working on. Like, like that's why we kind of call ourselves the Google of podcasts, is because, like no matter where content comes out, you just go check it in one place and you have it. Um, and like historically, like the podcast industry has been very English dominated, but now I think there's, like there's some fantastic podcasts that are coming out in other languages in other parts of the world.
Right.
And yeah, like I'm kind of excited to see what type of content people create. Like it'd be interesting to see, like, like you're obviously producing content in a place where historically podcasts haven't been that strong, right? Like it's only recently that it's kind of taken off. It's like, yeah, so like, that's the part that I'm really excited about, is I feel like I'm exploring like new content now, rather than just like, like kind of old content from the um, you know, historically kind of podcasting areas like North America or Europe or things like that.
The thing that I want to, and by the way, this is again for the sake of transparency. Uh, usually when I record with guests on the podcast, very rarely we had some interaction before, very rarely. So it's of course, you want to consider the compliment, consider it. But Ahmed, what you're doing actually for not only the podcasters and the podcast industry, there's one thing I always talk about, and people kept asking me like, why you do it? And the podcast is a For me, it's a passion project. It's not a business. It's not a
Hmm.
source of living in any way. And always I talk about this fact, like if someone, I don't know, randomly around the globe found out about the podcast and he or she listens or watch and they benefit, I feel happy. I feel like and I think what you're doing exactly complements this, right? Because it's just what you just mentioned, like it might be even in another language. And by making our voices as being able to be uh, available to people in other parts of the world, maybe they would be inspired. Maybe this conversation, someone will discover it, I don't know, maybe in China, I don't know, maybe in Indonesia. You never know.
Hmm.
And then they'll say, "Oh, look at Ahmed. He was a geologist, and then he had like multiple ventures, and then he's building this, and he has some resilience, you know." And this inspires someone, and this is exactly why I appreciate what you're doing, Ahmed, and all the efforts to make. uh, you call it like Google for podcasts. I call it like democratizing actually the knowledge that is within the podcast. Because as someone who ignored listening to podcasts for a long time when I was very much younger, I discovered how much I missed out, and I wish like I would have a solution similar to this. Anyway, Ahmed, as we're coming close to an end, any final words you want to share and where people can get in touch and learn more?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate your sentiment. I should respond to your comment. I
Sure,
think,
please.
I mean, one of the things that I've always found interesting about podcasts is that like when people write things, I always think like people write what they do, but people talk about what they think. And so so I think that's the difference between like when I used to work in my previous life, I had a boss who would always say that he's like, don't like read the report someone writes, but also go talk to them, because you'll learn far more by talking to them about what they did rather than just read the report. And I think that's what kind of podcasts are doing. I think like there's a certain amount of tacit knowledge that gets left in the conversation that nobody writes down, that very few people write down. Um, and like in written language, it's very hard to understand context, whereas when someone is speaking, it's very easy to understand context. So, and I think that's why I've always liked this audio format, is because I think podcasts are like this thing where, like, you're almost like a voyeur. Like, you see two people having a conversation, and you can kind of listen to it and absorb all of the lessons without actually being part of it. So so you
Right.
kind of like almost by osmosis, you kind of learning lessons. So that's, I think, one aspect. But the other aspect is, I think it's just people say far more than they ever write or do anything. And I think it's like, it's a great like knowledge base that we've created, which I'm not sure we actually utilize it as well as we could, because we just don't have a way of kind of going through the full library of it. So I appreciate your comment, and it's like, it's something that I feel that's quite important, because I think like we're creating all this content, and like not all of it's useful, but a lot of it is useful, and so is we just need to figure out how people can access it. um, but yeah, like, so like how the people can get in touch, like, like I'm on LinkedIn, you can go to our website, contact us. I mean, I'd love to hear what other ideas people have as well, about what we're doing and what we could do. To your earlier question about if you want to annoy us with what features we should put on there, I'm happy to listen to them. Feel free to give feedback. Feedback's a gift. So, so happy to take as
Yes.
much of it as we can.
Great. And thank you, Ahmed, again for sharing, what you're doing and of course your story today with my audience, and hopefully through your platform with many more people also as well. So thank you very much for your time. And this is usually how I end my episodes. This is for the audience. If you just discovered us and maybe through Podyssey, thank you for passing by. I hope you enjoyed. If you did so, give me a favor, subscribe and share it with your friends and colleagues. And if you are one of the people who keep coming again and again, the loyal fans, the loyal followers, thank you very much. We are airing this in 2026, so Happy New Year again. Um, you did fantastic things for the show in 2025. We were ranking almost all the year. Every week, we were like traveling the world in one of the top 200 Apple podcast charts. So I'm hoping to see this continuation in 2026. If not, it's not big issue. as I said, I was telling Ahmed, and sincerely, really, when I say if one person find it beneficial, I feel happy. Like it doesn't have to be trending, but of course, that shows like more people are listening, which makes me also happy. So thank you very much for your time and your followership. And as I say, always stay tuned for a new episode very soon. Thank you. Bye bye.
Hit that subscribe button, share the show with your tech-savvy friends and fellow entrepreneurs, and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Your support means the world to us.